Hello. So, what an exciting video. I'm back in my apartment and I have my actual camera in front of me, not my iPhone, which will be interesting. I'll see how this works. On one hand, I feel like it'll be easier because if I need to check something that I've written down on my phone, I'll be able to. But on the other hand, this can just be a way bigger pain. And I edit my videos on my phone anyway, so will this really have a benefit? Who knows? Who knows? But in general, today's video is going to be about how I've completed my yearly reading goal for 2022 and what I've learned about that. Yeah. So first of all, I think it's important to establish a little bit of background as to what kind of reader I've been over my life. Especially, I've never done like a video like that. But in general, I think I was like pretty well read through like middle school, and then I got a phone and that just derailed everything. And I don't care, right? Because I feel like just as I've watched some like really silly content on YouTube, I also watch like booktube and documentaries and news. So yeah, I don't really have like an opinion, like an emotional opinion about that. But it's just a fact that like having access to my phone all the time, it did make reading harder. And I think too, I had flirted with the idea of audiobooks for a long time, but I convinced myself that I was just not the kind of person who could listen to them, that I needed a physical copy because I'd get distracted with an audiobook. And now I use them all the time. It's like my favorite for planes, for train rides, for walking around. Like, I've got an audiobook on deck. I love them. So yeah, what really ended up changing is I went abroad one year and I was really mad because I was like, look, I don't know what to read and I think I'm going to focus on reading non-Western literature. And so that was like a big push for me to read was specifically to read non-Western literature, which I'll talk about what that's resulted in and how I'm going to pivot for the years to come, hopefully. There was that. There was also when I went to grad school, I would always walk past this one bookstore, and as a stress response, I would buy books. And I've read, I think, most of the books that I bought while I was there, and they were all really good. So that was like two things that really kind of kicked off my like reintroduction to reading. And one of the big things I saw last year, which is, yeah, I saw in 2021, she's like a fashion blogger or something, but she kind of commented that she reads one book a year. One book a month. And I really liked that idea because I think beforehand I was giving myself really lofty goals, and I was like, hey, that's actually a good idea. I'll just try to finish at least one book per month a year, so 12 books in total. And in doing that, like, that's like a very low-key goal, and I think I can do that. And so for the past few years, in 2020 I read 10 books, in 2021 I read 22 books, and this year I have read over 50 books. So that's like a pretty fun growth there. And well, I don't know, let's talk about why. Let's talk about like what was my reason behind the 50 book goal. I had two big ones. The first one was that towards the end of last year I was reading pretty consistently. Like, I feel like I was reading probably like 3 to 4 books a month. So I was like, okay, I know I can read this amount, I know I can get this done. I don't need to worry that like I'm not capable. I know I'm capable. The other reason is I was already kind of getting closer into the booktube space. I've been aware of it, but I was getting actually into it, finding recommendations, finding readers that I liked. And I was like, I really want to belong to this space. I have a few friends who are readers and I want to connect with more people about them. I want to put my books out there. And so that's where this desire came from. And I kind of told myself that, well, how are you going to have a channel about the books that you read if you don't read consistently? So to me, I had the goal, but then I had reasons behind the goal, things that were like A, reasons as to why this goal was possible for me, but B, why do I want to achieve this goal in particular? And especially consistency. Like 50 books, who cares? But to get to the X number of books read, if it's a pretty big number, then you have to read. You can't just like read 50 books in 2 months. You have to do it, you know, like month by month by month. And so to me, that was a really big benefit, is that having this big goal is quite nicely segmented into different parts. And yeah, that was really beneficial and useful for me. The other thing I found that was really cool about having this challenge is there's a lot of books that I've started but not finished. And so in having such a lofty goal, I was like, hey, this is a great time to, like, rather than focusing on a book that I haven't started any pages on, let's get some of those ones that I've already worked on a little bit, like, off of the shelves, you know? And so that was just an added benefit. I also want to be clear too that there's sort of these, I would say, like, less personally motivated reasons. Like, okay, like I want to read because I want to be consistent with reading, so I'm going to set a goal. Or I want to set a goal because I want to read and I want to be consistent with my reading. And I want to do a book too. But like, what beyond that was my reason? And for me, I have a really clear reason why I like to read. I feel like when I read, I become a more creative, observant person. I feel like I see the world more poetically, more lyrically. And like when I listen to music, I don't have that experience, but when I read, I do. I think I describe things better. I think I'm more present in the moment. I imagine how I would describe this scene if I was to ever write it down. And so yeah, I had I have a really clear reason that I know I benefit from reading. I know I have a positive outcome when I do that. So, and two big, I feel like, extra points to bring up is, first of all, like when it comes to me as a goalkeeper, as a person who has goals and who occasionally maintains those goals, is that I'm not one of those very like strict, stringent people who sets a goal and I have to complete that goal and I will do nothing except for like achieving that goal, you know? Like, I'm not that person. I can really easily like fail at my goals and not be too bothered by it. So I think that in that way, I'm okay to set goals because they're not going to like consume me, and I know that if I fail, it's not going to be the worst thing in the world for me. And I can recognize some people aren't like that, and for some people it can be a really negative experience. And I've had places where I've had like really negative experiences where I put really strict restrictions on myself, and I had something that I enjoyed became, you know, kind of a negative experience. But yeah, I'm able to do this and be kind of unbothered. But also too, I think that part of that's because I recognize the arbitrariness of like, I don't care the number of books that I read, I care that I'm reading. So like, why should you be upset if your goal is 100 and you read 85 books? Like, that's so much. Wow, like that shouldn't upset you, that shouldn't bother you. Or even like what I noticed this year too is I have a bunch of really big books. It's not that I've put off reading anything because I wanted to stick to some goal. It's more like, well, I can see how having a goal of reading a certain amount then becomes useless if you're like, it becomes weird if you're like, okay, I need to read X number, so I'm going, like, why would I read these really big books which are going to take a lot longer and potentially be more dense than something that's a bit of a quicker read. So I think, yeah, recognizing that, understanding, you know, as long as I'm achieving the intention behind the goal, the numbers that I've put on myself are irrelevant. And so like, I'm probably going to make a video about my actual 2023 goals that's more like substantive, but I want to talk about the changes that I'm going to make in goal keeping for the future, goal setting for the future. So as I mentioned, I like wanted to read less Western literature, and that's my same goal, because what I feel like I've ended up doing is reading a lot of Japanese lit, which I'm fine with. Like, I don't want to like stop that necessarily, but I think I want to finish the books that I actually have on my shelves and then get into, firstly, I would like to get into more Chinese literature. I like studied Chinese as a language and like some of the history behind China. I've studied abroad there, so I feel like since I have some background, that's a area I want to focus on, because yeah, like I don't know, I definitely feel like many things when it comes to East Asian culture, you'll see like a big glorification of like Japanese cultural exports, Korean cultural exports, and then it'll be like, and Chinese, and we're all like, I'm gonna keep my mouth shut on that one, you know? And yeah, especially like, I don't know, I understand when people have comments about like politics, but I will say that art is famously a very subversive place, and oftentimes you can find the things that you're looking for, like that resistance that you're looking for within literature and film and music and, you know, etc., right? So yeah, I want to read more Chinese lit. I want to read more South American lit, and I think I'm going to specifically focus, okay, not just South American, like Latin American lit, right? But I think I'm going to focus to begin with on Argentinian literature and Colombian literature. So that's going to be my 2 goals for next year, in terms of like, yeah, LATAM stuff, and then like moving around, you know, get some Ecuadorian books in there, get some Mexican lit. I've actually read like non-inconsequential amount of like Mexican poetry, so that's great. I would love to reread it as like an actual reader and not as an assignment in a class. That'd be cool. My next goal in line with all of these is to read more African literature. I realize Africa is a continent, but hear me out here. I want to focus on stuff that deals more with like Colin, like I want to like reread Things Fall Apart. I just have a couple books that I really want to read that are like more about the like impact of colonization. So it's like, I have like topics I want to explore in that space. So yeah, maybe it's not like country specific the way that I have for like Latin America, but in that I am like, there's a kind of a reason for it, especially too because like I would love to read stuff by Sudanese authors, but there's obviously been the split, and so given that it's such a new nation, having like lit from there. But yeah, I mean, of course, like Nigerian authors always, right? Like they're like a big force. Yeah, but like I guess it's like I feel like I have more knowledge about Central and South America, so I feel like it's easier for me to kind of break it up in that way. And since I don't have a lot of very specific knowledge about different African nations, like I don't want to pick 2 countries that like I actually have like no background in like the generalized continental literary canon, if that makes sense. I don't know. Yeah, who knows. But I have a couple of books on my list, and I just finished an awesome book that had a couple of like books that it had like mentioned, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna read all of those too, because those all sound really good. Yeah, and then my last thing is I want to read some French lit, which I realize is kind of like, didn't you say you want to read not Western stuff? But I've also not read a lot of like classical literature from anywhere, so I feel like kind of trying to include that as well could be a fun exercise. I'm also taking French classes now, so it'd kind of be cool to have some literary background to add to that. Yeah, I feel like this will be my focus going forward, less on maybe numbers of books read specifically, because I feel like I'm in a groove. I feel like it's really easy for me to pick up a book now. It's very automatic. I feel like I pick books up and then I read them and then I finish them. But yeah, now I want to focus on filling in the gaps of my actual reading experience, more than just reading by numbers. In terms of stuff I'm reading currently, it's still the same stuff from the other day. I just also am reading Nothing But Blackened Teeth by, is her name Cassandra? Cassandra might be the name of the character. What's that? I have the book over there. I'm gonna go get it. Here it is, Nothing But Blackened Teeth by, it is Cassandra Khaw. Creepy horror, very short. So we'll see if I can finish that tonight. Not that that's a goal, and not that I'll be disappointed if I don't achieve that goal.